Matt Marion. I'm going to be starting off today with Beethoven's Sixth Piano Sonata, the second movement. Thank you.
Good morning, and welcome to the Unitarian Church, the Unitarian Congregation of Mendon and Uxbridge. This morning, we have arrived at this time of worship to celebrate life, to shape meaning, to find renewal and connection. This morning, we come to give thanks, to share our lives, to find comfort and strength. This morning, we gather with hearts that are open to receive inspiration, to share our gifts, to create something larger than the sum of our individual lives. Welcome, and let us worship together. We will begin with a chalice lighting. I'd like to invite Marcia to come forward and light the chalice. The flaming chalice is our symbol of our Unitarian Universalist faith. May this flame continue to invite us together into community, to inspire our spirits, and ignite in us a passion for peace and justice. Thank you, Marcia. Let us now join together with the affirmation of this church. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. Typically in the service, we would have candles of joy and concern at this time. However, in this virtual format, we will have this later in the service. And you are invited to send in your joys and concerns either on the YouTube chat or on the website, the church website contact form. And we will get those joys and concerns, and I will light candles for them later in the service. I'd like to share a poem today. It's called The Peace of Wild Things by Wendell Berry. And I wanted to highlight one sentence of the poem before we read it, because sometimes I think it gets lost in the poem, and I think it's a very important sentence. And that is, I come into the peace of wild things who do not tax their lives with forethought of grief. The Peace of Things by Wendell Berry. When despair for the world grows in me, and I wake in the night at the least sound in fear of what my life and my children's lives may be, I go and lie down where the wood drake rests in his beauty on the water and where the great heron feeds. I come into the peace of wild things who do not tax their lives with forethought of grief. I come into the presence of still water, and I feel above me the day-blind stars waiting with their light. For a time, I rest in the grace of the world and am free. For a time, I rest in the grace of the world and am free. I would like to invite you to refer to the PayPal link that will be posted on the chat. And the congregation, even in this time of pandemic, still needs finances to keep the doors open, keep these services coming, and to minister to the wider community. And thank you for all of you who give from your time and your talent and your treasure. Thank you. Today, there is often an All Saints' Day service in many churches. I've decided, in light of the pandemic and the election and all the uncertainty, that I wouldn't have that the main theme of the service, but I would like to include a time of meditation where we can remember the saints in our lives. And by saints, I mean those people that have passed on before us, that have impacted our life in good ways, in powerful ways. So saints aren't just people on some official list somewhere. Saints are those people in our lives that have passed on before us. Our great-grandparents, our grandparents, perhaps our parents, perhaps other relatives and friends and mentors. We remember those people with gratitude. And so I'm going to play my singing bowl today in honor of all the saints in our lives. After that, I have an All Saints' Day prayer by Christine Robinson, Reverend Christine Robinson. And then we will conclude this section with Matt playing Blowing in the Wind by Bob Dylan. For all the saints, all our saints. Spirit of life, whom we know best in our own loving and being loved, hold us as we remember those we have loved and those who have loved us. May our gratitude sparkle in our lives. May our tears lubricate our souls. Help us to know that we are not alone in our grieving. And help us also to come to that peaceful place in which we can take what we have learned from those who have gone before us into our own lives. Remind us that we too are mortal, and that the only enduring legacy we leave is the love that shines through our lives. Amen. Thank you, Matt. We are living in uncertain times. One thing that can help us get through this uncertainty is the understanding that the kinds of things we're experiencing have happened many times before in history. While the details are different, all the things we experience are common to human experience. Here is one example. When Reverend Aidan Ballou served as minister in this church in the 1930s, in the early 1930s, he wrote in his notes that it was reported that a man in town died of Asiatic cholera. Aidan wrote, "Our whole country is in a state of great alarm on account of this disease, which is causing many deaths in certain localities." We might have heard of the 1918 flu pandemic, but I had never even heard about the cholera pandemics that swept across the world in the 19th century until I read this in Aidan's notes. These pandemics in the 19th century caused a lot of death and suffering all around the world. However, like everything else, pandemics come and pandemics go. They were living in uncertain times, and we are living in different uncertain times. With the twin unknowns of the pandemic and the election, we are living on the knife's edge. the election is a critical situation when two very different outcomes are possible. We need strategies to take care of ourselves and keep on working to make a difference in the world, no matter what happens. In challenging and uncertain times, how can we avoid falling into discouragement and despair and keep hopeful and motivated? Let's consider the importance of grounding, balance, and action. Grounding. It is always important, and especially during these times of uncertainty, to have practices that help ground us. We all need some things in our lives that feed us. These could be various ways of practicing meditation or prayer, journaling, doing art, spending time in nature. They could be tending to goats and rug hooking. They could be collecting teacups and various kinds of tea, making jewelry, having a hobby farm, collecting antiques, or fixing up a house. These activities can bring joy and lightness to our lives and also help us be less likely to give in to feelings of being overwhelmed and discouraged about the state of the world. Leif Hansen, leadership coach at sparkinteraction.com, shares an exercise for grounding in the face of uncertainty and insecurity. Leif suggests a stream of consciousness activity that can help you remember how much you do know. In uncertain times, sometimes reminding ourselves of what we know is a big help. How this activity works is you find another person and you take turns saying all the things you know for 2 minutes each. Here are some things I know, and maybe you know them too. I know I'm alive. I know I'm okay in the present moment. I know I am loved. I know I have many blessings in my life. I know I can handle what comes because I have handled many challenges before. I know that things always change. I know the sun will come up tomorrow. I know I am strong and adaptable. I know I will be okay. And I also know that I can do more with others than I can do alone. So in this exercise, you keep talking for 2 minutes each, and if you get stuck, you simply repeat the things you already said. So thank you, Leif, for this exercise. And I suggest if you don't have a person to do this with, you can still remind yourself all the things you do know while looking in a mirror. Or you can journal about all the things that you know and find comfort in that. Balance. There are various things we need to balance in our lives. When something bad happens, we need to find the balance between despair on the one hand and denial on the other, and find the place of hope, accepting what is and believing that things can be better. And we also need to find the balance between keeping informed and news overload, doom scrolling. Finally, we need to strive for a balance between work and family and rest with relaxation. Here is a story about finding perspective in uncertainty, titled Various Things, including A Farmer's Horse Ran Off, based on a Chinese folktale, and I haven't been able to find the original source. A farmer and his son lived off the land, laboring in their fields from morning to night. One day, the farmer's trusty horse ran off. Try as he might, the farmer could not find him or catch him. When he did find him, the horse had gone. And the farmer's neighbor, seeing this, rushed to the farmer's side and said, "How bad for you. Now you've no horse to draw your wood, to haul your wood." The farmer looked off in the distance and said, "Good news, bad news, who knows?" The very next day, the horse came back. And the horse came back with a mare, a beautiful mate that it had found in the woods. And so now the farmer had 2 horses. And when the neighbor saw the 2 horses in the farmer's field, he said, "How good for you. You must be so glad." The farmer looked in his neighbor's eyes, and he said, "Good news, bad news, who knows?" The next day, the farmer's son decided to tame the new wild mare. And as he was trying to tame the mare, the horse threw the boy and then trampled on his legs in many places. The farmer saw this from afar off and rushed out to the field and picked up his broken boy. And the neighbor soon heard what had happened, and he came over to the farmer's house, and he said, "How bad for you. This is so terrible." And the farmer looked up with tears in his eyes, and he said, "I don't know. Good news, bad news. Who really knows?" The neighbor could not understand why the farmer wouldn't acknowledge this terrible misfortune. In time, all the country there went to war. All the able-bodied youths were drafted. The farmer, with his arm around his limping son, and the neighbor stood alongside the road as row upon row of young men marched off to the battlefield. The neighbor wiped the tears from his eyes as he waved goodbye to his own sons, who walked away with sturdy strides. He turned to the farmer and said, "Say it. Say how good it is for you. Your son is home. You must be glad." Again, the farmer sighed and said, "Good news, bad news. Who knows?" This is a story without an end. We never know how our stories end. All we know is the present moment, for sure. Action. What can we do when we live in uncertain times? We can act. While there are many things that are not within our power, there are very many things we can do. We can build community. Can you check on a neighbor or friend by giving them a call or sending them a note? I called one parishioner recently who, after I introduced myself as the new minister, she said, "I'm sorry, I can't do anything to help the church right now." And I said, "No, I'm simply calling to introduce myself and ask how you are doing." It is my vision to help build a church community here where all of us catch the vision of taking care of one another even more than we already do. On the edge of this pandemic and political situation, we are all living in uncertain times, and we are all in this together. When we are wearing masks and socially distancing, we are actually caring for one another. While we are further apart, maybe somehow we understand a bit more than ever how interconnected we all are. And even with our current limitations, we can still build community. What else can we do in the world? We can exercise our civil rights and responsibilities. We can vote. I voted. I've never before worn a voting sticker in church, but it seemed especially important this time to lift up that our votes are very important. We can vote our UU values and make our voices count for declaring what kind of world we want to live in. We can vote for candidates who come closest to supporting our UU values, for protecting the rights of all members of our human family and this earth we live on. We can also give time and money to support causes we believe in. We can write letters, work for a phone bank, encourage others to vote. There are many ways we can act. And we can act locally. What can we do right here in Mendon, in Uxbridge, and the other neighboring towns? Sometimes, when the things in the bigger world seem overwhelming, we can take actions closer to home that make a difference, and they also help us feel more empowered. There are many local endeavors you can join in. A parishioner told me this week about the Pen Pal program here in Mendon that connects seniors with young students. A protest was held here at the church this past summer, taking a stand for the valuing of Black lives. I have started talking with people from the Blackstone Valley Sunrise Movement for environmental justice. I can't wait to find out more about other good things that are happening in our corner of the world and see what we can do together. Where are you called to make a difference? We all can't do everything, but we can each do some things, and together we can build a better world. We can work on grounding and balance in our own lives, we can build community, and we can take action. I'll close this sermon with some of the words to a hymn that will be our postlude today, "We'll Build a Better Land." And we'll hear this at the very end of the service. Words by Barbara Zamadi from the Hebrew Scripture prophets Amos and Isaiah. We'll build a land where we bind up the broken. We'll build a land where the captives go free, where the oil of gladness dissolves all mourning. Oh, we'll build a promised land that can be. We'll build a land where we bring the good tidings to all the afflicted and all those who mourn. And we'll give them garlands instead of ashes. Oh, we'll build a land where peace is born. Come build a land where sisters and brothers anointed by God may then create peace, where justice shall roll down like waters and peace like an ever-flowing stream. Come and let us build and rebuild a land together. Amen, and blessed be. It is now time in the service where we acknowledge those joys and concerns and light candles for them. I'll start with 2 candles from Marcia. The first one is a candle of concern for the election. Our future could be different or more of the same. The second one is also for the election. A candle of joy for the election. May our votes be blessed and restore democracy. From Marcia. Next is a candle of appreciation for changes from Peter. Our mother-in-law, Elizabeth Noonan, has moved in with us from the Cape. And our daughter, Emma, is now working in Pennsylvania for several months. Appreciation for changes and thinking of Elizabeth and Emma. And we have a candle that says, "Vote," from the governing board at the Unitarian Congregation of Mendon and Uxbridge. And finally, we have a candle of joy and celebration for Sonia for passing her clinical rehab counseling certification. Congratulations, from Sam, Ben, and Cecilia. And Sonia, congratulations from all of us here at the congregation. I light this final candle for those things that remain unspoken in our hearts and minds, that still will acknowledge them in community. We will now extinguish the chalice. We extinguish this flame of the chalice, but we carry with us the warmth of caring community, the light that comes from seeking knowledge, and the flame of passionate commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we meet together again. So for the benediction, as I mentioned earlier, we will hear, "We'll build a land." For the postlude, we will hear, "We'll build a land." For the benediction, we will also hear, "We'll build a land." We'll build a land as we work together in balance, in grounding, in building community, and in taking action. Let us remember these things and live into them until we meet together again. Go in peace.